up? Can you hear me back there? Make sure. Can't hear it? No, a little higher?
Doesn't matter.
My AV crew is going to come here. Well, I'll speak as loud as I can, so hopefully you won't need the mic. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Stan's son, Jon, and as the youngest of the 3 siblings in our family, I drew the short straw, so I get to be the MC for a while. And of course, this is a day all about him and about memories of him. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. And so what we've decided to do to try to make it fun for everybody, we've asked a few key members of Stan's life to give us a few words, a few memories about things they remembered and share them with everybody. So we're just going to get going on that right now. And we're going to start with Stan's nephew, Michael Burton, sitting over here, who's going to talk a bit about, all the hipness side he's going to talk about. But I want to point out about Michael, he's been incredibly helpful to us in thinking about the family history. And so all the work that you see that was put into putting all these photos together from collections all over the family work, Michael's work. So I think a round of applause for thank you.
Hi guys. I'm the opening act. My son just said I should start by singing Volare. You all know you're in ancient history class now. If you can't tell by just looking. Oh. Point it right at your mouth. Right about here.
Yeah, that's good.
That's called the microphone.
Where's the wire? Okay. Anyhow, I've been asked to talk about some of my personal recollections and also about some family history. How about this? Is that? Oh, okay. Okay. And I'm going to have to read, which I assure you is better than my rambling. So, fasten your seatbelts. Before Uncle Stan was my uncle, he was my hero. I was 3 when the war was declared after Pearl Harbor, and my earliest memories of Stan were photos of him in his Navy lieutenant's uniform during World War II. My parents didn't tell us much about the war early on, and so pretty much all we knew was the Victory Garden in our backyard and our uncles who were fighting in Europe and in Asia. So Stan and his brother Art, who was in the Army, personified the war for us kids, and they were our heroes and heroes for our country. Their coming home at the end of the war was a really big deal for everyone in the family. Stan had married Peg and was eager to start a new life, but he also found time for us Burton kids, particularly my brother Phil and me. And from that time on, among our 4 uncles and numerous relatives, Stan became the man. In a family where laid back and easygoing were not descriptors for anybody I lived with, he seemed to me the epitome of cash and cool and fun. I still remember his taking time to do stuff with Phil and me, particularly taking us to New York from New Rochelle to buy stamps at Gimbel's department store. They had the greatest stamp department in history. And we were allowed to be totally rambunctious. I remember his first house, I think it was Hartsdale, I can't remember for sure, where Audrey was born. Was that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Post Street.
And before our family moved to California in the late 40s. And we separated again for a few years. The summer of 1953 was memorable because I got to spend it living with Stan and Peg and Audrey and Patty, no John yet. I was 15, it was my first time back in New York in 5 years, and it was like I left the cast of The Addams Family and got a co-starring role in Father Knows Best. Because Stan certainly did. My game plan was to kind of sleep at the Slotes but prowl Manhattan, which I really missed. But Stan had other ideas. I always imagined myself as his first management consulting client because he sat me down and he said, "Look, Mike, you're living with us and you're going to be part of this family and do what we do. You can go into the city on Saturdays, go to a matinee if you have to, eat at the automat, the hard, but then get home before dark. And you're not going to be idle, you're going to get a job." And the next thing I knew, I was a paper boy. The classic American first paying job for a kid, delivering the afternoon White Plains paper in our neighborhood. It was a great and real summer. Audrey and Patty were super cute, as they still are, and I'll always remember it. And then when I went to college at Columbia, the Slotes became the place to hang out on the weekends. And as for my 50-plus adult years, I want to channel my late brother when I say this, because Stan was for both of us, but particularly for Phil, a true and trusted friend and confidant, an advisor and moral supporter as we moved through various ups and downs of our lives. Phil just admired Stan so much, and I wish he were here to tell you himself. And in the decades since Fran came along, Alice and I and Stan and Fran enjoyed so many amazing times together, cracking each other up, discussing family and politics and books, and engaging in some tasteful gossip. And others will, I'm sure, say, and others will, as I'm sure others will say, we remember Stan's great curiosity, his intelligence, his smile and laughter, his sense of fun and humor. A great guy. Now I wanted to share a little family history, which I was asked to do, but I'm happy to do it. More from the Lerner side of the family, which was Stan's mother's side, because I don't know much about Ben, Stan's father. Ben was born in 1882 in Russia and lived into his late 80s. He was the youngest sibling and had 3 sisters and 3 brothers. Stan's mom, my grandmother, was Muriel Lerner, called by everybody Maury, although her original name was Marcina. She also had 3 sisters and 3 brothers. Maury's parents, Charles and Sophia Lerner, immigrated to the U.S. from Odessa, Russia, in the late 1880s. Their roots before Odessa were probably Romania. It seems they were middle class and didn't flee for their lives, but to make better lives. Charles and Sophia and the 4 oldest kids spoke only Yiddish when they arrived in America and first settled in Philadelphia. But the kids were all still quite young, so they never spoke English with an accent. The family, like many immigrant families, constantly reinvented themselves, changing dates and locales at will. They changed the year of their immigration endlessly, and the Russian-born siblings declared themselves all born in America. And Stan's mom famously changed her date of birth with great alacrity, making herself years younger, obviously. Ostensibly for legal reasons, but also, I imagine, for reasons of vanity and second husband hunting. Return the page. The patriarch, Charles, was a rug merchant in Russia and did the same work in Philadelphia before becoming a builder, as Stan and his father later would. The family soon moved to Brooklyn, where 2 more daughters were born. Joe stayed in school, one of the brothers, and became a dentist in Atlantic City, but his brothers Mike and Sam were restless and ambitious, and they both headed for San Francisco after the turn of the century, 20th century, to work for, who else, a Russian immigrant carpet man. The 2 older sisters, Annette and then Maury, Stan's mom, both married around age 20, around the same time, and Maury and Ben joined Sam and Mike in San Francisco after the earthquake because it offered an opportunity for a young lawyer. And their first 2 kids, Milton and my mom Helen, were born in San Francisco. But it didn't work out for them because pretty soon they were all back in Brooklyn, the Lerner brothers and the Slote family, where Stan and Art were born. The Slotes lived in a house on Union Street in Brooklyn, which is still there, the same street where my daughter Kate now lives. Sam started a wholesale women's blouse manufacturing company before World War I, which evolved by 1918 into the Lerner stores, with the 3 Lerner brothers as partners. Stan's father did the legal work for the company in the beginning and for many years thereafter, but never became a partner. The Lerner shops grew spectacularly and fast, going from 1 store in Manhattan to about 7 or 8 the first year, and at one point there were some 500 stores around the country. The money was pouring in, and so in the early 20s there was a really big Lerner migration to Mount Vernon in Westchester County, across the border from the Bronx. Maury and Ben and the 4 kids lived in 2 different houses, not at the same time. The second, a quite substantial manse in the main part of town that took up a whole city block. It had a marble entrance, a fountain in the dining room, in the basement an imported Louis XIV pool table, which I have a photo of. Arthur once told me it had to be still there because it was much too immense to ever be moved out. One census listed a live-in staff of 4, so they lived well. Stan's uncle, Sam and Mike, moved half a mile away at the northern end of Mount Vernon when it was still farm country and built enormous back-to-back estates. That became the hangout for the family at large. The compound included a swimming pool, a duck pond, a stream running between the 2 houses, a mini barber shop in one basement, an aquarium, an aviary, and a small, well-stocked zoo, including a rambunctious baby elephant. Stan famously told his teacher when he returned to school, when he returned to school with bandaged feet, that an elephant had chased him around the pool, causing him to burn his feet. He wasn't believed. Stan had an Irish setter that he called his own, and he and Art went every summer to Camp Greylock, the preeminent boys' summer camp in the Berkshires, where Stan won the Banner Award for swimming and was also noted as a horseback rider. Ben worked for the Lunar Stores and for Mike and Sam on other matters for many years until the relationship kind of broke apart. The Slote family, with my mother married and the eldest son graduated from college, began feeling a bit of hit from the Depression, and the remaining 4 moved back to New York City, incidentally living right next door to where I brought up my kids on West 99th Street. And then they moved to Florida, and they lived until Stan entered Cornell. When World War II came, Stan entered the U.S. Navy Officers Training School in Boca Raton, and then Midshipman School in Manhattan, and this is where I came in. In a large, loving, and often combative family, I miss my grandma Maury and Uncle Stan the most. Maury always exuded warmth, encouragement, and support when I was young, and Stan did the same when I was older. Maury lived till she was 96, my mom until 98, and Stan, of course, till 99. Like his sister and his mother, Stan led a long life and touched and enriched our lives in so many ways. We miss him a lot.